Okay, so just wanted to announce the releasing of year 2 of SPEDFRS. This is the special education reporting system for special ed allowable reimbursable costs. So I'm not going to go over a training video. I'm just going to more or less highlight some of the changes, give you some areas that you can go to obtain additional information, and ask any questions that you may have. So the user's manual is in SPEDFRS, which you access SPEDFRS through the NDE portal, just like last year. So if you click on the user manual, you're going to see that you should get an updated 2020 version. So if by doing that, you still get one that says 2019, what I would do is go in and clear your browsers and clear your history, so that will reset it. So hopefully you'll get this version. We updated the user's manual to include new features. Some of those features are, we just did label changes to make things a little clearer. We did do some enhancements in the contracted service provider section. You'll need to enter those costs by AFR account. System's being slow. Apologize. Of course, my computer just hung up. I'm working remotely, so I apologize. So in the contracted section, while I'm getting back in there, we need to have districts indicate what account that they are claiming those contracted service costs. So what I mean by that is when you're using an approved service provider, we need to have you identify the costs for ages 0 to 2, 3 to 5, 5 to 21, and the AFR account that those are associated with. So in doing so, if you are doing these costs, then you would tell us that these are, and we should be able to go back then and look in your accounting records for this account 2183 and find these expenditures for this Jamie Alexander. And then those should also correlate into the accounting information in SPEDFRS into any of these 3 sections. The only cost that was included or added to this year would be the 64.8 for IDEA. In IDEA, they included 6404 and 6410 and 6408 in 1920. We've updated the question and answer document in here. We, for this year, changed some of the labels on the types of information for the supporting documentation that we needed. That was one area that we struggled in last year, was getting the appropriate documentation. So what we're needing are the contracted service bills, tuition bills or receipts, and the account information should be for object codes 1 to 800 for those major object codes by AFR account for SPED AFR accounts, and then the payroll documentation, including the names. So what we should be able to do is look at this account information and trace that back to the account information in SPEDFRS here for these accounts. So one thing to be very careful of when you are coding your expenditures and when you're completing your AFR through school and the finance, that you're using the appropriate SPED AFR accounts. Last year there, with the coding changes and the new year for the AFRs and for SPEDFRS, we found that there was some inconsistencies in how districts were using those codes. So I would be very careful in coding those to make sure that you are using the SPED codes. And in the email that we sent out and on our special education website, we do have additional information for links that can help in completing these data collections. So I would use those, and then I would also make sure that you're using the right special ed accounts. So I would do, make sure that you're looking at these resources. We have a video out here that is a PowerPoint. Oops, I'm not sure I'm sharing that screen. I'm sorry. So then, yeah, so here are the additional resources in our special education website. So I'd make sure that, you use these resources and make sure that you're using, again, the correct AFR accounts through financials or school finance. And you should be requesting reimbursement only for those allowable reimbursable costs for special education. So in your accounting records, one comment was made, well, why can't we just upload our accounting records? Well, your accounting records could include non-reimbursable costs. So when you're entering costs into SPEDFRS, be sure that you are doing just those allowable reimbursable costs. And we have information in that PowerPoint that talks about some of those reimbursable costs, and those are also in Rule 51. So I would make sure that you look at some of those for some examples. We've had the export data collection feature. This is the print feature that will allow you to export a Excel worksheet, and there'll be a workbook with a worksheet for each of those sections up above. And then we've added some additional summary of accounts of each of those sections. So this is a comparison that will help when you are doing your data input and doing some validations. Now be sure when you are doing your submission, there's a two-level submission. There's a financial person that submits to the district admin, and then a district admin submit. And before you can do that, all of these sections need to be green, and all of these edit checks need to be validated. So make sure that when you're doing that, when you do your submit, if you don't have these cleared, you won't be able to submit. So those are some of the major changes that we put into the system. So in October, the system will send out automated emails up to the due date. So on October 31st, that's the due date. 2 weeks prior to that, then the system will start sending out emails if you have not actually done those submissions. And it will go out to the contact person. So if the contact person is different than the person logging into the portal, then I would make sure that you put that additional information in there. So people logging into the portal in SPEDFRS will get that email, and then those people that are the person in this contact information will get the other 100% email. Sure.
If you had said that or not. So give me a call back again. 402-317-8033.
So that's all I really have on this video. I wasn't actually going to do a training video today. I just wanted to let everybody know that the system is open. You can go in starting today to enter your data. The deadline is October 31st at midnight. If you have any Okay, I just had a message. Somebody's wanting to know if SPEDFRS is live. Yes, you should be able to go in and enter data in. The system opened at 9 o'clock this morning. So I guess I would open it to any questions right now. This is just kind of an overview and just more of a sharing that the system is open. You know, last year was the first year of it. We're in year 2, so we did we did refine some things in the system to hopefully make it a little easier, more user-friendly. We updated the user's manual, so I would make sure that you do that because it does include a lot more information than it did for last year.
Lori, this is Geraldine Erickson, and
Sure.
I can log in and put in district contact information, but when I try to go into any of the financial entry, I get an error message that says, oops, an error occurred while processing your request.
Okay, well, I'll send something to our programmer. So the system this year, we made it so that you had to enter in contact information first. And once you do that, then you should be able to go into all of the other sections. So there must be a bug. I was in the training portal yesterday and did testing and didn't have any issues, so it must just be in production. So I will send an email to, and if you have a screenshot, if you want to send that to me, then I could just send that on.
Thank you. And I'm wondering, it's not a Mac computer issue, is it?
It could be because I'm using a PC and I'm
you were on a PC.
So that could be part of the problem.
I've tried different browsers too, so it's not browser specific.
No, the instructions do say Chrome is better because that's what we've been testing in, but I don't think you should have major problems across those different platforms. But it could be a Mac versus a PC. And so I guess if you send me a screenshot, please indicate what, you know, you're using, whether it's a PC or a Mac. That way we can try to troubleshoot a little better.
Lori, it's Jean Anderson. Can you talk a little bit about the systems that SPEDFRS cross-references with,
Sure.
like NSSRS numbers and uploads and those kinds of things?
Great, yeah, we have that in our instructions as well. But for the staff information, we access information out of the staff reporting system. So that opens now for the 2021 school year, and it closes in June for that current year. And so we're accessing prior year data. So what that means is there's SPI codes, which is an indicator whether they're special ed. So if they're special ed, they're going to be an S for school, H for state funds, an I for IDEA federal funds for special ed, or a 7 for IDEA for early childhood. So that's the indicator that we look at when we are checking to see if staff are properly reported in staff reporting and then allowable for IDEA or SPEDFRS. So I would definitely take a look at that. Let's see, at the user's manual. Oh, sorry. I was going to reference the page number that it's on. So we added a table of contents to our user's manual. So hopefully that will, you know, be of assistance here. So if you go into the staff information, it's going to take you and tell you about the different fields that are required. And then when you do your upload, and it talks about those SPI codes. So I would, you know, definitely look at this page 9 in the user's manual for that information. Because if you don't have staff correctly coded, then that could cause problems for getting a reimbursement for those staff. So the other system that we access is, again, I'm sorry, my computer just froze up. So SPEDFRS, when we talk about the AFR accounts, we do access information in the annual financial report through school finance. So what we're doing is we're doing a validation against the annual financial report for those costs that were reported there for special ed, as well as those allowable reimbursable costs that are entered into SPEDFRS. So SPEDFRS should, those AFR accounts for SPED accounts should not be more than the AFR school finance reporting accounts. AFR could be more than SPEDFRS because the AFR could include non-allowable costs, but that should never be more, SPEDFRS should never be more than the AFR. So you'll see up here on the top, there's a status bar. So the system will automatically this fall, or I guess I should say winter, December, January, go out and do a check against the AFR and the GMS. So it's looking at the school finance after they do their review on the annual financial report, and it's going in and it's checking against those SPED accounts. And so if there's a large difference in it, the variance fails, then SPEDFRS will return SPEDFRS to the district, and then you'll have an opportunity to make the correct adjustment, whether it's amending the AFR or if it's amending SPEDFRS. Last year, the system did the validation, but it was more of a manual thing that we did here at NDE, where we followed up with districts, and there were a number of them that had to amend their AFR. So hopefully by doing it in December, January, and being more automated, it'll give the districts an opportunity to do it sooner instead of waiting like we did this last year, May and June, when we were doing the NDE review. And so it's very important that when you're doing your AFR accounts and coding things in SPEDFRS, that you are using those SPED accounts because it affects your state aid, it affects maintenance of effort and other reporting. So make sure you're familiar with those new codes. Let's see. And then grants are the GMS. So again, we're going to go out and validate against the GMS 1920 final requests. So when you're doing this, you should be reporting the amounts in, oops. Okay, I'll have to send a message to our programmer, so I won't be able to show you that right now. But IDA 6406, so you're reporting all of your costs, whether they're, let's see, to include IDA costs in here. We had some districts that didn't include IDA costs in SPEDFRS because of this validation. Then we had some issues trying to validate those costs. So again, submit all costs for SPED, whether they're IDA or not. And it would be those. So if you are doing your IDA, you should be doing those reimbursements now. Those are due October 15th for IDA, the final requests. And so when you're reporting this, you'll be reporting what you have submitted into GMS, not what you've received, because there could be a timing difference in when we actually get the funds paid and those reimbursement requests reviewed. So again, make sure that you're using those for the amount that you are requesting from SPEDFRS. And I mean, IDEA, I'm sorry. Okay. I hope I covered that for you, Jean.
You did. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of stumbling around here today with the remote not working quite as well as I had hoped. And so again, when you're in the system, if you are having difficulties, you know, just shoot me an email, and our programmer is very responsive, so we can get things, you know, rectified in a very short time frame. Are there any other questions? Okay, and one thing I wanted to mention, in the user's manual for transportation and in the PowerPoint, we've included some additional staff that you can reach out to if you have questions. So if you have questions with transportation, you can reach out to Tom Geschel, Greg Prohaska, and Mercy Suarez for questions with transportation. I can help with some data entry, and so can the NDE help desk. If you have data entry questions, I would basically reach out to the help desk. So you would be, okay, so there was a question that says, do we need to submit all contracted services billings or just for birth to 5? So in SPEDFRS, you are entering costs for 0 to 2, 3 to 5, and 5 to 21. So this data collection is a combined collection to include all of those age groups. 2 years ago, they were all separate data collections, and you had paper forms for transportation and birth to 5. Last year was the first year that we combined all of those age groups into one data collection. And so the thought process here is, you know, if you're doing your AFR soon, you're going to be doing your IDA reimbursement requests and then SPEDFRS. And so if you're using those allowable AFR accounts and doing those at the same time, it should kind of all blend together. Any other questions that I might be able to answer? Okay. So I would include, the question was about uploading documentation. So I would upload documentation for all age groups, because we need to make sure that the amounts being reported in any of these age groups, 5 to 21, 3 to 5, and 0 to 2, even for contracted services, are for the right age group, because this system is generating reimbursement for ages 5 to 21. So we need to make sure that we do not have any 0 to 2 or 3 to 5 costs in this 5 to 21 age group. So that's why it's important to see your bills and your accounting records. Any other questions? Okay, so again, if you run across anything when you're another question was, do you need each bill or just the last bill with the summary of the year costs? For the ESUs, it's nice to have a year-to-date, as long as we can see the services that were provided, the costs, the breakdown of that for a year-to-date, that's great. Otherwise, yes, we would need each bill. What we don't want is just a summary saying, okay, this was the cost, or a statement. We need to actually see those invoices. So if the ESU does have a year-to-date spreadsheet that breaks that down monthly for us and those types of services, then that would be acceptable. In fact, year-to-date totals or summaries are easier for us when we're trying to, and easier for you as a district than when you're entering those costs to go back and verify them in the system. But we need to be able to see that detail. Where do we find the document? What document are you referencing? If you're looking for the user's manual, it's either on our website, it was in the email that I sent out. If you're looking for trying to access SPEDFRS, it's through the NDE portal. Another question says, when we're completing the MOE worksheet, should we anticipate IDA grant receipts for the current year district receipts? Okay, I'm not real familiar with the MOE worksheet. Greg Prohaska is the expert on that, so I would reach out to Greg Prohaska. Another question here says, I'm ready to submit my final IDA request. Yes, prior submissions. So if you have a reimbursement request that is submitted, you cannot do a final. The system won't allow you to do a final until that has been reviewed. So what we're telling districts are, you can go ahead and submit those requests, even if it is a final. Just don't mark it a final, just mark it a request and submit it. Then when we do the review of that, we'll look at it and we'll have to return it at that time to be made a final. Right now, we are reviewing requests that came in mid-June. So by submitting a reimbursement request as a request, not a final, if you have a pending request out there, would allow you to, you know, at least get that submitted. Now, speaking of IDA, one thing to be sure of is that you have all your funds budgeted. There are emails going out about that. If you don't have all your funds budgeted, you won't be able to do a final. Make sure if you are submitting requests for salaries and benefits that you've amended those staff into the application, because we cannot reimburse for staff that aren't included in the application. So those would be a couple of things to look at for IDA. Another question, it says, can you review the vehicle claim types of depreciation, mileage, and actual costs and the differences between the two? Okay. I don't actually review the transportation. I am familiar with doing the data entry in it. So I would actually say, look at this user's manual. And in here, it talks about adding a new vehicle. And when we get down to, these are the different types. There's depreciation, mileage, and actual costs. And then it talks here about, okay, if you're going to be depreciating about our vehicle, these are some information about that. Actual costs. So if you have questions on what was best for your district, whether you depreciate a vehicle or if you just claim actual costs, you could reach out to Greg Prohaska or to Tom Geschel. Because I know there are some districts that choose to do it different ways, and I'm not an expert in that, so I would hate to mislead anybody. So I would look at the user's manual, and if you still have questions regarding that, I would reach out to Greg Prohaska and Tom Geschel on that. Any other questions? Okay, I don't see any other questions coming through the chat. So with that said, if there aren't any more questions, and if you do come across questions, and just send us a, an email or give us a call, and we're here to help you. Hopefully some of the changes that we made for this year will, make it easier for the districts in submitting SPEDFRS. If there's nothing else, I will end this recording and I will wait to hear from any of you. Thank you.